you been longing, waiting, searching for a radically inclusive, vibrant, emergent, sweet, traditional, non-traditional, musical, welcoming Jewish space to go deep, to sing, to eat, sometimes to fast, to remember, to heal, to play and to pray in?
Welcome to Micah,
an everybody-friendly, inclusive, multi-generational spiritual community where innovation drives our explorations into and celebrations of Jewish life. A congregation where people of all ages seek to build community and help prepare the world.
Judaism at Micah. Experience it in person or online. For a full list of our services and programs, like us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and visit our website, congregationmicah.org. Shalom Aleichem, may peace be upon you.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom Hamidenu shomreinu lechayim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom Hamideinu shomreinu lechayim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom V'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom V'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim. Lechayim, lechayim.
HaKodesh, Norat Tehilot, Osei Feleh, Norat Tehilot, Osei Feleh. Malachutecha ra'u vanecha, Okei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, Zelianu ve'amru, ve'imlihu ve'amru. נאמר כי פד אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. שמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אחת שאלתי אותה בקש אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אחת שאלתי אותה בקש שבתי שבתי בבית אדוני שבתי שבתי כל ימי חיי שבתי שבתי בבית shifti, shifti, kol yemei chayai, lachazor benoam Adonai, ulvaker becheichalo. לחזות בנועם Adonai, to gaze upon the beauty of Adonai. One thing, I ask you, Adonai, to be with me all of my life. Achat sha'alti meit Adonai, achat sha'alti ota vakesh.
Good evening, everyone. So thank you so much for joining us for what we think is one of the most special, beautiful services of the year. And Roy and I were chatting before service, and we were deciding whether or not it was appropriate to say Good Yontif. It's not quite Yom Tov yet, Yontif. It's not quite the holy day, but I call this the pregame service. It's the opportunity to get us in the spirit and center our minds and our hearts in the right place. In just a moment, we will make Havdalah together to close out Shabbat. Not yet, though, Cantor. I mean, you can noodle for a long time, but I have a few words. And what I'll mention is that the Holy Day period really is bookended by this Havdalah experience. So for those of you, and I hope it will be all of you, that will spend Yom Kippur with us the full day and stay through Nila, which we close, as the gates close, with that Havdalah, you can think back to this moment when we make Havdalah tonight, and it's kind of nice to be able to gauge what you've gone through between now and the close of Yom Kippur about 2 weeks from now. Actually, it'll be 2 weeks from tomorrow evening. And hopefully it will feel challenging and exhausting and gratifying and cleansing and renewing and heart-opening and eye-opening and all of those things. That's what we hope for all of us, ourselves as clergy included. So, if you ask a room full of people if they feel that God has forgiven them for their mistakes or their sins, most people will say, sure. But if you ask that same room full of people if they've forgiven somebody else for wronging them, less than half of them will say, sure. Now, that's a disturbing statistic, if you will, especially for us as Jews, because our prayers to God presume our having forgiven those who have wronged us. And Yom Kippur and this Holy Day experience says, how can we ask God to forgive us while we continue to harbor resentments against other people? But the thing is, we know that forgiving is tricky. People do things that are really wrong and really hurtful. People lie and they deceive and they break their marital vows and they pass on dangerous diseases and they abandon family members when they're most needed and they destroy the trust of innocent children. And if we forgive them, if we forgive the people that have really hurt us, we feel that we've let them off the hook somehow, that they've gotten away with something, right? Does that sound or feel familiar? And we worry that we might even just encourage similar behavior by forgiving them. And even in the less awful cases, if we've been treated unfairly, or we've had our hard work go unappreciated, or gotten a worse deal than someone else, we want justice to be done. We want to be rectified in some way. And then, of course, there are the extreme cases, right? We think of like the Holocaust, or those who have died recently as a result of senseless gun violence. Do those who perpetuate those kinds of atrocities even deserve our forgiveness? In the early spring, we have these few weeks in our Torah that might be considered by some to be dry and boring. It's sacrificial offerings. Those of you who are part of Torah Study Weekly know we got literature on leprosy and fungus in the walls. I mean, it's a lot of good stuff, I can tell you. And the rabbis, I believe, to make it up for us, balance those portions with some of the most interesting prophetic portions Haftarot. And one of my favorites is about a certain man named Naaman. And his name means faithful, Naaman. And he's the general of the Arameans, who at the time are enemies of the Israelites. And Naaman has leprosy. So it's not going so well for him. And he also has in his household a servant, a woman who was a captive taken from her home in Judea during the last war. And she says to Naaman that in Israel, there is a prophet who can cure leprosy. And so he goes to the king and asks to be sent to Israel because he wants to go see this curing prophet. And the Israelite king is sure that this is a provocation meant to cause an international incident. The king is distraught, but the prophet assures him, don't worry, all will be well. So Naaman comes and meets with the prophet, who instructs him, here's what you need to do. You need to bathe in the Jordan River, and then you will be cured. And Naaman is angry. He is sure that he's being fooled and treated like a fool. The rivers at home are twice as big as the Jordan, which is really just barely a stream. And those great rivers, which he's been in, have not done any good for curing his leprosy. So he stalks off angry, and it seems as if the king's worries were well-founded. But again, the servant woman comes, and she says to him, hey, Naaman, suppose the prophet had told you to do something difficult, even painful. Wouldn't you have done that in order to cure your leprosy? And Naaman says, of course I would. That's what I came here for. And so she says, so why don't you just try this easy thing? Get in the Jordan River. So he does. And guess what? He's cured. And war between the Israelites and the Arameans is averted, at least for a few more years. Now, I'm telling you this story because there is this body of knowledge about forgiveness and the medical benefits it can provide that is well known and well substantiated. But because it involves no special magic and no expensive treatments, we often ignore it and assume that it will do nothing for us. But I'd like to say to you, as Naaman's servant girl did to him, since you are willing to do things that are expensive and difficult and even sometimes potentially dangerous to improve your life, why not try something easy and safe? Every single one of us will be hurt by someone during our lifetime, maybe even in the next 24 hours. In fact, we are likely to be hurt many times over by various people and circumstances. It's the nature of human life that some things happen that we didn't want to have happen, and some things that we want to desperately happen do not come about. And most of the time, we take that in stride. But sometimes when we're hurt by someone close to us in a way that offends our sense of fairness, it seems like we just can't get over it. Sometimes that hurt develops into a grievance, and that grievance starts to interfere with our life. Raise your hand if you've been there. Yeah, the rest of you are just not telling the truth, but that's okay. Yom Kippur is coming. Now, I would describe it as if we were each air traffic controllers with different events in our lives taking off and landing. A grievance is like a plane that continues to circle in the sky, using up our attention as the air traffic controller and making it that much more difficult for all the other planes to come and go safely. Another way to think about how failing to forgive impacts your life is to think of yourself as a country inn. Different aspects of your life come and go, and they rent rooms in the inn. That is you. And a grievance may begin by renting only a small back bedroom, bathroom in the hall. But eventually it takes up all the rooms in the inn, preventing others from finding a space. The rabbis put it, first you are pulling it, then it is pulling you. So forgiving doesn't mean that what the other person did wasn't bad or wrong. And it doesn't mean it was excusable or that we want it to happen again. It just means we take control of how much we want a particular grievance to influence our lives. Forgiveness begins with our understanding that we have the power to stop events that happened long ago from making us feel crappy today. It's less a particular action, forgiveness, like saying I forgive you. It's more of an attitude. It isn't about forgiving some one person who did something that hurt us. It's about looking at the world with a more gentle, accepting attitude. Even if we can't forgive others, we get some traction for being more forgiving in other ways. We can be more forgiving with people we love, or our family members who are related to us, who are imperfect and offend us periodically. We can forgive our parents, their inadequacies, our husbands and wives, their carelessness on occasion, or inability to read our minds, and our children, their messy rooms. I'm sure that never happens. Or their abilities to push our buttons and bring out in us the parent we swore we would never be. And even if that's difficult, we can start by being more forgiving of unimportant strangers, rude clerks, incompetent salespeople, aggressive drivers. I'm going to say that again for myself, aggressive drivers. Because we're never going to see them again in our lives, so let's not give them the power to raise our blood pressure. Forgiveness understood as an attitude is actually about a basic religious issue: human limitedness. We are not God and we cannot control everything. And there are things we might very much want, but that doesn't necessarily mean they will happen. Often we are full of desires about how those around us should behave. But in Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai poses this challenge: go out and see what is the best trait a person should acquire. And he answered his own question. The best trait is a good heart, the ability to be attentive to the needs of others and respond to these concerns and look at others with a kindly eye. So maybe this year we'll allow the wisdom of our rabbis and our Torah to imbue us with a forgiving attitude toward life. Because honestly, if we don't, we're the only ones that suffer. May we, like our Torahs, have the chance for renewal, purity, and a fresh beginning. So we'll invite you to rise and let's make Havdalah together.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei minei vesamim Borei minei vesamim La 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei meorei ha'esh Borei meorei ha'esh Yai lai la 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 lai Yai lai la 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 lai Ya la lai 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 Ya la lai lai ya la lai Ya lai la 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 lai lai Ya lai la 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 lai lai Ya la lai la lai lai Ya lai lai ya la lai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol Eliyahu hanavi Eliyahu hatishbi Eliyahu 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 hagiladi Bimhera veyamenu Yavo eleinu Himashiach ben David Himashiach ben David Eliyahu hanavi Eliyahu hatishbi Eliyahu 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 hagiladi
We'll invite you to please be seated.
I invite you to please read with me our first confessional prayer of the season. The holy season now begins. In these days, during the Hebrew month of Elul, we begin the process of Teshuvah. The days of awe are fast approaching, time to consider where we went wrong. Times when we gave up on our ideals and gave in to our impulses. We held grudges and refused to forgive. We ignored and idolized. We insisted that we were right. We judged others harshly and wrongly. We were jealous and unjust. We were lazy and we lied. We missed the mark and minimized our mistakes. We mocked what we did not understand. We neglected those who depend on us. We were negative and narcissistic. We overreached and overreacted, too often erupting in anger. We poisoned and polluted. We perverted truth for personal gain. We quelled the voice of conscience within us. We quit too soon and quarreled too often. We ridiculed and resented. We refused to accept help. We rationalized our failings and our flaws. We spurned the wisdom of our tradition. We squabbled and we scorned. We were vain and vicious. We vilified foreigners and strangers. We wasted time, strength, and talent. We wallowed in self-pity, wished but did not act. We coerced the weak to do our will. We drove away those we loved with silence. We deceived and denied. We enticed and enslaved. We exalted money and material goods. We followed air, sea, and land. We flattered and falsified. We gravitated to those who gossip. For all these sins and more, we return to you.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai, Eilecha, Venashuva, Venashuva, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yameinu kekedem, Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai, Eilecha, Venashuva, Venashuva, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yameinu kekedem, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yameinu kekedem.
We all love the Micah quote. It just sits so well with us. Oseh mishpat, to do justice, and to ahavat chesed, to love mercy and compassion and piety, and to tznei alechet, to walk humbly. This whole process of which Rabbi Lori spoke about at the beginning, which begins this evening and really continues through Yom Kippur, it's a process where we need to take that humble stance, where we appeal to a God of mercy, hoping that we can create a world of justice. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a little Adonai, Adonai, and we're going to have a little silence just to think about some of the things we've done in the recent past and the year that falls behind us, and how we might start to make restitution, how we might make that world feel a little bit more whole.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun, Erech Apayim Verav Chesed Ve'emet, Notzer Chesed Lalafim, Nose Avon Vafesha Vechata Venakeh. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun, Erech Apayim Verav Chesed Ve'emet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nose Avon Vafesha Vechata Venakeh. ברחמים, ברחמים וברצון את תפילתנו. השיבנו אדוני אליך, השיבנו אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו, ימינו כקדם. אל תשליכנו, אל תשליכנו. לעת זקנה ככלות כוחנו, אל תעזבנו. שמע קולנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חוס ורחם עלינו, עלינו, וקבל ברחמים, ברחמים וברצון את
So one of our traditions at Micah is to invite a few of our members each year at Selichot to share a little bit about themselves and their experience over the last year or so that perhaps changes or affects how they enter this Holy Day period and think about some of the themes of our Holy Days, such as forgiveness and repentance and renewal. So I'm so pleased to welcome Hannah Malkowski-Berger to our Bima tonight to share a little bit about herself and what she's been doing these days.
Hi, everyone. For the past year, I've worked for a nonprofit called Tennessee Higher Education Initiative. We partner with college programs across Tennessee who bring associate's and bachelor's degree programs to prisons, and we provide academic and reentry services to incarcerated people in those programs. Our goal is to treat those who are incarcerated with humanity and let them know that we believe everyone deserves a second chance. I work as an academic coordinator, which means that I go into men's and women's prisons each week to provide on-the-ground support to those in prison, who we refer to as our students, and facilitate communication between the students, the college, and the prison. This role has pulled back the curtain on a lot of the systems at play that are intentionally kept tucked away from society and has changed my perspective of people who are incarcerated. And it's made me think about my Judaism and our history differently. With Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur coming up, we talk and read about new beginnings, atoning for our sins, and asking for forgiveness. We get to walk into Micah, a beautiful space to reflect and be in community, and we are guided through how we can work to be better. We attend services, listen to the words of our rabbis, and set aside intentional time to be away from work or school and be with our families. And we do this year after year because we keep making mistakes and know how hard it is to get it right. But imagine you are convicted of a crime and are sentenced to live behind bars. In an effort to change your path and prepare for a better life for yourself and your family, you choose to enroll in a college program while incarcerated. You work all day until 5 p.m. and class starts at 5:30. You have 30 minutes to eat and get your school supplies for class, which are in your room because you can't bring them to work. For each step of the process, you have to wait for a group of people going to the same place. You have to wait for an officer to open the gates and announce the group is leaving and where you're going. This may mean giving up your shower or phone time for the day, and that's just to get to class. That doesn't take into account the challenges of perhaps having been out of school for years, having limited access to the internet and resources, and maybe even not knowing how to study. We tell ourselves that people in prison are being rehabilitated, but even when they do have opportunities, the bottom line is there are a lot of obstacles. During the high holidays, we focus on ourselves and how we can improve and become better people, and that's critical. But this work has made me think about that that's only part of the process. Maybe we should be thinking about helping others have the opportunity to improve and become better people. Maybe asking for forgiveness for my sins isn't enough. Maybe I should think more about forgiving others, and in my work, helping my students forgive themselves. I try to do this by showing up consistently, having normal conversations about sports and music, helping them succeed in their classwork, and showing them I believe they are valuable and worthy of improving themselves and striving for more. I've mentioned only a fraction of the obstacles encountered by my students trying to get their college degree, but the challenges continue even after their sentences are completed. This Passover, I thought about our freedom story in a way I hadn't before being in this role. The Jewish people finally became free of Pharaoh and slavery, but we were sentenced to wander in the desert for 40 years because we weren't worthy. We had lost our faith in God. I think people who have been released from prison are in a similar situation. They still aren't deemed worthy. They may have escaped the obstacles of prison, but are still not free from the system's harm. They encounter barriers in getting a job, in finding housing, in getting a driver's license, and in applying to school. In each of these instances, they have to fill out paperwork that asks them if they've ever been convicted of a crime. They've served their time, but the sentence isn't over. My eyes have been open to the realities of life behind bars that I never considered growing up in Forest Hills. The depictions of prison and people in prison shown in crime shows and social media do not show the full story as I see it every week, and that's a disservice to my students. Being in this role, I get fulfillment from the relationships I've built with my students and by talking to others about the truth and complexity of their circumstances. I also think about what else I can do and what others can do to support them and reframe the narrative. I encourage you, as we enter this important time of reflection, to think differently about people who are incarcerated, who have done the hard work to repent for their sins and are trying to lead a better life once they get out. Pay attention to laws to be voted on. There are bills to try to eliminate the question, have you been convicted of a crime, on college applications. If you own a business, consider hiring justice-impacted people or removing that checkbox on applications. If you're a landlord, consider renting to a formerly incarcerated person. Use humanizing language like incarcerated or formerly incarcerated persons or justice-impacted individuals, as opposed to inmate, felon, or prisoner. The labels and words we use to describe human beings matter and have an impact. I'm grateful that I get to walk into Micah surrounded by my community and try to be a better person, and I'm motivated by my students to help others do the same. Thank you.
We'll continue with our confessional prayer, Vidui. Ay 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 Ashamnu Bagadnu Gazalnu Dibarnu Dofi Ay 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 He'evinu Vehirshanu Zadnu Chamasnu Tafalnu Shakir Ay 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 Ya'atznura Kizavnu Maradnu Ni'atnu Sararnu Avinu Pashanu Sararnu Kishinu Oref Ay 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 Rashanu Shichatnu Ti'avnu Ta'inu Titanu Ay 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 ay.
Thank you, Hannah, so much for sharing your words and experience with us, and I'd like to welcome Bonnie Caraba forward to share hers as well.
Over the past year, I have really felt my religion was challenged, and I have spent a good bit of time trying to determine what my Jewish responsibility truly is, not only for myself, but also to my children and within my community. Before moving to Franklin, my religion was just an aspect of my identity. I knew I had brown hair, I knew I was a United States citizen, and I knew I was Jewish by way of 2 Jewish parents. I thought entering into an interfaith marriage would be the most challenging religious concern my children ever faced, but I was so wrong. The number of anti-Semitic incidents my children have experienced is baffling. Less than a month after moving here, when my son Caden was just 5 years old, a classmate found out he was Jewish and told him, Jewish people don't believe in God, are going to hell, and are mean. Just this month, my now 13-year-old daughter, Alexa, went to a sleepover where her friend's older brother found out she was Jewish, and for the rest of the evening, he and his friends decided to refer to my daughter as the Jew. Tell the Jew to bring us the popcorn. How should my 13-year-old daughter respond? How do I give my children the tools to know how to respond? I married the love of my life and chose that relationship over religion to an extent. And I say only to an extent because before my husband and I even started dating, he knew that I wanted to raise my children in the Jewish faith, and he let me know that he would make that his priority as well. I would often say, it's not only that I want them to be Jewish, it's that I believe there are times in one's life where you look to God for answers, and I want my children to know when that time comes, where do they turn? Which building do they enter? Where can they seek comfort? Soon after moving to Franklin, my mother followed us, and one of the very first classes she took here at Micah was how to be a grandparent to an interfaith family. She realized through that group how important it would be to continue the traditions that she grew up with, the traditions that she held in our home, while I grew up in the traditions that she hoped to pass down to my children. She saw to it that we would be together for Passover and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and share the same recipes that her grandmother and her mother shared, light the same menorah and use the same Seder plate. Becoming more purposefully Jewish was a new role for my mother. Fortunately, my husband and I were more than eager for her to embrace this role. Unfortunately, it didn't last as long as I would have wanted because my mother had a massive life-changing stroke, and our focus shifted to her health. I can speak immeasurably about how the community at Micah has supported me while I have cared for my mother, and Rabbi Lori asking me to speak this evening is a testament to how deeply she focuses on the needs of her congregants. Because what Rabbi Lori knows is that as my mother has declined, it has coincided with an increase in the anti-Semitic situations my family has faced. And the building that I thought was so important for my children to know they could walk into, well, it turns out it was me that needed to know which door was mine. I needed this community. My children want to be here. They know there's a comfort at Micah that they do not have anywhere else in this state. They know they will not be othered here. This is a term I recently learned at Daniel and Tara Biller's home when I participated in a JCC event about raising Jewish children in Nashville. My children don't want to be the other. The one that doesn't fit in. On the one hand, of course, I want my children to know how to advocate for themselves and their beliefs. But as a mother, I never wanted my 5-year-old son to have to feel embarrassed because of his religion, or moreover, question his religion because he was shamed for it. So as I reflect on all of this, I am reminded of someone who recently defined responsibility to me as my ability to respond. And I had to really think about what I was able to do. What changes was I able to make? So first, I needed to embrace my Jewish. And what I mean by this is I will no longer feel embarrassed because I don't know what the Torah explicitly says in regards to this or that belief, or the exact prayer for this or that blessing. 90% of my Jewishness was cultural. So when I moved here and found myself as the token Jew at my kids' elementary school or in my daughter's gymnastics class, I was afraid to identify as being Jewish because of fear that I was not Jewish enough to appropriately represent. I was worried I wouldn't have the correct answer if my non-Jewish neighbor asked me a faith-based question, and my uneasiness caused me to withdraw from even the potential for such conversations. But just last week at the second meeting of Raising Jewish Children in Nashville, when I asked again, how can I give my children the tools to know how to respond when they face anti-Semitic remarks? Deborah Olashansky from the Jewish Community Relations Council had just the most perfect answer. It was so simple. She said, tell them to speak to what their family does. Their answer can be, well, in my family, this is what we do. And there it was. I had the first step in how to embrace my Jewish. I knew what my Jewish family does, what my Jewish traditions were, and that brings me to the second change I need to make. I have to continue the traditions my mother can no longer lead. I understand now how important it is for me to take on this role and to see that my children continuously have Jewish culture in their lives. I don't know if any of you know this, but Rabbi Lori and Julie Greenberg often hold a book club for parents on Sundays while our kids are at religious school. And my first year at Micah, the book was Secrets of a Happy Family. There was a section that discussed how important it is for children to know their family's history, geographically, culturally, religiously, etc. It was described like laying the foundation in the building of a house. Children who knew where they come from are more grounded and, in turn, have more self-confidence. It provides the structural support needed to build a strong family. I want to take on the responsibility to see that my kids know their identity is safe. Because of this community, I have the ability to respond to my children's needs. So, I closed the chapter on this past year realizing that I need to embrace my Jewishness, the Jewish that I am, and going forward, I will actively seek out other Jewish families and Jewish events and uphold the Jewish traditions in my house to the best that I can, in hopes that I will build a strong foundation, not only for my children, but also the other children in this community.
Selichot selach lanu mechal lanu kaper lanu ve'al kulam elo selichot selach lanu mechal lanu selach lanu Mechalanu kaperlanu.
Thank you, Bonnie, so much. At this time, we're going to also honor a time-honored tradition at Selichot, which is changing of our Torah scrolls. It's time for an outfit change, and we are going to undress their purple and dress them in their holy day white. And we like everybody to participate, so we're going to invite everyone to rise. Now, you don't have to come forward and help change covers, but you're welcome to. And we have about 4 or 5 Torahs, I think, to change out this evening. So we'll invite you to please rise at this time, and if you'd like to help us, to please come forward.
Adon Selichot bochein levavot gola hamukot dovir tzedakot hatanu lefanecha rachem aleinu hatanu lefanecha rachem aleinu ador beniflaot vatik benechamot zocher brit avot choker kelayot hatanu lefanecha rachem aleinu hatanu lefanecha rachem aleinu tov umitiv labriot yodea kol nistarot kovesh onot lovesh tzedakot hatanu lefanecha rachem aleinu hatanu lefanecha rachem aleinu malei zechuyot nora tehi
פניך רחם עלינו פועל ישועות סופר עתידות קורא הדורות רוחם ערבות שמח תפילות טעים דעות חתנו לפניך רחם עלינו יאי לי 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 יאי לה 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 יאי לה 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 יאי לה 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 יאי לה 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 יאי לה 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 יאי לה 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 יאי לה 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 יאי לה 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 יה לה 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 יאי לה 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 יאי לה 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 לה
So I'll ask you to remain standing, and anybody who'd like to come forward and open our ark doors for the singing of Avinu Malkeinu, please come forward at this time. I did see the Averys, and I know there are others. They're not going to open themselves.
Avinu Malkeinu Chaneinu Vaneinu Avinu Malkeinu Chaneinu Vaneinu Ki ein banu masim Aseh imanu Tzedakah v'chesed Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed Ve'hoshienu Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed ve'hoshienu Avinu Malkeinu Chaneinu Vaneinu Avinu Malkeinu Chaneinu Vaneinu Ki ein banu masim
So I think we'll close with just one more song. Everyone can be seated if they'd like to for now, and then we'll conclude our service with the sounding of the shofar. And again, just to thank you to Hannah and to Bonnie for sharing with us this evening. And we will have a dessert reception following. If you're not too full from dinner, you'll stay for an extra sweet and just to visit.
This last melody is called Besefer Chayim, the Book of Life. So as we start the Selichot season, we offer this prayer that we will all be inscribed in the Book of Life. Besefer Chayim Bracha v'shalom u'farnasa tova Besefer Chayim Bracha v'shalom
ופרנסה טובה. ניזכר וניכתב לפניך. ניזכר וניכתב לפניך. אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל. אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל. לחיים טובים ולשלום. לחיים טובים ולשלום.
Please rise. Tekiah.
That's all I got.
Shavua Tov.